about normal distribution, the data will resemble a bell curve, right? When you have a bell curve, it means it has a single peak, so the mode is in the middle. Also, the mean, median, and mode would be in the middle also, right? And it's symmetric around the single peak, and it forms a bell curve, right? So let's see. And I may have a question like what you have in 5.1 at the bottom here, and give you a scenario, and you have to sketch me. Is it a bell curve, left scaled, right scaled, and kind of label the data a little bit. So are we okay with those? You will have scenario question like that. 5.2 is a really important chapter with a lot of information. So we spent like 2 days on chapter 5.2. We will use that to solve problem that the data would be normally distributed. So the mean is your mu, the standard deviation is sigma, and then you need to be able to put together a bell curve that the mean is in the middle. Between one standard deviation, we have 68% of the data. Between two standard deviation, we have 95% of the data. Between three standard deviation, we have 99.7%. So I will give you these three numbers. 68, 95, 99.7, but you need to be able to put it where it belongs on the curve, okay? And we did different example. When the number given to you landed on the standard deviation, those questions would be easier. You can calculate the percentage and probability of them. But sometimes if they are not in the standard deviation, then what do we do? So for example, number 4, instead of the number on the standard deviation, here they ask you for 31 ounces, then you need what? The z-score, and then use the table, right? So some of them will need that. The table will only tell you less than or greater than. Less than the value, right? So if the question asks you greater than, then you need to do what? From 100% subtract whatever you found, right? So let's do one of the questions together on the handout. The next question is about the standard deviation, so I want you to try that. Number 6. So number 6, assuming the pulse weights of an adult male are normally distributed, so that would be the key word. If it's not normally distributed, you cannot do a bell curve. So the mean is 87. And the standard deviation is 6, so they gave you everything. So you need to build a bell curve, and I want to see the percentage, I want to see the mean, and each standard deviation with the pulse. And it's following this rule. And then I need to find the percentage for between 69 and 93, and then use the table to find the percentage of pulse weight less than, I think that number is wrong. Can you change this to 80 for me, please? I did it really, really late yesterday night. That looks really odd. C is supposed to be 80. Sorry about that. I will upload a cleanup one to the web. So build me a bell curve. Okay, what is the mean? 87. How about over here? Because it's 87 plus what? 6, okay. Because the mean is 87, the standard deviation is 6, right? So you got 93, and then 93 plus 6? 99 plus 6? 105. Over to the other side. 87 subtract 6 is 81. Subtract 6 is 75. Subtract 6 is 69. Okay. And between one standard deviation, we should have how many percent? 68% between 2 standard deviations, 95% between 3 standard deviations, 99.7%. So that's what I mean by you need to build that standard deviation thing and then make sure you have all the stuff set together. Are we okay with that? Questions? Okay, so now what else did they ask? A. That's A, right? Sorry. B say what?
Find the percentage of false rates between adult men and 69 and 93.
Between 69 and 93. Are they standard? Yeah, so from -3 to what? Positive 2. So how do I get that?
The first one is 93.
Oh, 93, sorry. Okay, so how do I get from this here to here, basically, the percentage?
34 plus 34 plus 13.5 plus 2.5.
So if you already figure out the rest of this, so you say this is what? 34%. Why is it 34%? The 68 divided by 2 different part, right? Equal part, right? And then this one would be what? 13.5%. 13.5%. How do you calculate that again?
95 minus 68 divided by 2.
Use the 95 subtract 68 divided to 2 equal parts. And then for this part, it's going to be what? 2.35%. How did you get that?
You could just add up, or you could subtract 95 from 99.7.
Subtract, using 99.7, subtract 95 divided by 2, right? Okay. All right, so you told me that should be between 69 is here to 90. Oh, is it 91? 93, okay. 93 here. So I just need to add them up, right? So basically this part is 68% plus the 13.5% plus the 2.35%. Together we have what? 83.85%. Are we okay? All right. So we may ask you to buy an answer statement. I don't know. All right. The last part is C. C says, use the table to find the percentage of false rates of adult less than 80 BPM. Okay. 80. So 80 is between 75 to 81, right? So I assume my C score would be between what and what? If the position is here, when I found that C score, it should look like what? About 80 is between 81 and 75, right? So your Z-score should be between what and what? -1 and -2, so it should be -1 point something. If it's not -1 point something, you get it wrong, okay? So how do we calculate Z-score again? The data, which is 80, subtracting the mean is 87 divided by standard deviation is 6. So what would that be? 2 decimal places. -1.17. So once we get the Z-score or standard score, we use the table, right? And you will be given a table on the test. So I need to find the negative side and 1.7, right? Oh, 1.17, sorry. 1.17 will be what? You go to -1.1 and then go to the 7 here, right? 0.1210. Meaning how many percent? 12.10% of the data will be below 80 BPM. How about greater than? If I want greater than, you will use 100% subtract this, right? So always remember the table will only give you less than. So if I ask you greater than, you have to use 100% subtract that. On the example, we also ask you like between two of them, right? Then you will need to do a little bit more work for that. Okay, question on this. Is it difficult? Once you practice it, it should be okay. But if you miss the class and you didn't watch the lesson, that would be a big problem. So anytime if you miss any lesson, you need to take those notes.